Welcome to the Way We See It podcast.
where we talk about politics, social justice, and culture.
I'm Tati,
And I'm Ariana.
and we are your host of this podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to the Way We See It podcast. This is episode 28. Officially week 8 now of season 2. So, thank you for coming back. We missed you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the 2 episodes we dropped last week. It was pretty hectic. We had our second part episode for medical marijuana, where Adi interviewed what was her name again, Adi?
Cynthia Quesada.
And she interviewed her, and it was very informational, so definitely check that one out. And we also started our episode series for this month for Women's History Month, so also check that one out as well. But Adi, what did you want to
Yeah.
say?
Make sure you follow us on our Instagram and Twitter, The Way We See It, spelled TheWayWe, letter CIT. And if you haven't already, make sure you check out our website, and the link can be found in our Instagram and Twitter bio. And you can read our blogs, our current events that we update every week, our resources and citations that we use in each episode. And also make sure, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And also the link for our YouTube channel can be found on our Instagram and Twitter bio.
Yes. So this week we are continuing our discussion with medical marijuana. But this is officially part 3, right? Yeah, part
Yeah.
3 basically. And we actually have our third guest speaker ever on the podcast, and her name is Dr. Maggie Carpenter. So welcome. We have her here with us now. You want
Thank
to
you.
introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Maggie Carpenter. I am a family practice physician in New York State, and I am able to certify people for medical marijuana. I have been doing it for about 4 years. I also do a lot of palliative care and a lot of women's health. Um, so,
Welcome,
Nice.
welcome.
Well, thank you for joining us.
thank you.
So first, what influenced you to pursue a career in the medical field?
I was extremely young when I decided I wanted to be a doctor. I think I didn't even know what it meant. I actually first said I was going to be a nurse, and then my aunt said, "Well, why don't you be a doctor?" And I said, "Okay." And then as I got older, I really loved. You guys were talking about social change, the ability to be able to help people on a basic level, and it's some of it's through medications, but a lot of it is through listening and you know other issues that are going on. And helping people. So it sounds corny, but I went into medicine to help people, and that's what I've been doing. So I went to medical school, graduated in 1997, and then did my residency out in Seattle, and then practiced in Kansas, practiced in New Zealand, Brooklyn,
Wow.
and then settled 10 years ago in the Hudson Valley.
Wow.
Wow, so you have like a lot of like experience in various
Lots
places.
of different experiences. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. I can't stop smiling because I'm just like, I could just imagine it, like how that whole experience is.
Oh, yeah. I never thought I'd settle down somewhere, but I have to say, I really love it here.
Yeah, the
So
Hudson Valley is really nice.
it is.
I have to give it that.
Yeah.
So what steps did you take to become a doctor once you decided to go into that field?
So, did my undergraduate degree actually in Russian studies, but I took the pre med requirements. You have
Hmm.
to take. They changed. I think they may have dropped some of them, but you had to do physics, chemistry, organic chemistry, calculus, and take the entrance, exams, and then apply and went to SUNY Downstate in Brooklyn, and was there. That's 4 years. And then after that, did residency, which was 3 years, and that was in Seattle at Swedish Hospital. And that's kind of like on the job training. You get paid as a resident, and you're lower on the pay scale. But after having made nothing through medical school, it seems pretty nice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then you get out and you're done. So you have to pass your boards and ready to go.
And you take the boards after you're done with your residency, correct?
Yes, yeah. You take the boards afterwards.
I'm getting such Grey's Anatomy vibes right now.
Well, you know what's funny is I actually think that Grey's Anatomy was based on the hospital where I did my residency in Seattle.
Oh my God.
It was a
Wow.
gorgeous hospital. Had artwork everywhere. It was right on the top of what they call Pill Hill in Seattle. And so whenever I see it, I'm like, I think they based that on our hospital.
Yeah, that's so cool. Imagine that, because I actually stopped watching Grey's Anatomy a few seasons ago, but I do know it's based in Seattle, and you pretty much see the main characters like and how they came up into the doctors in their field. So it's interesting to see that at least that information with the residency is actually accurate.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I have never watched a Grey's Anatomy, like a whole episode.
Mhm.
I'm much older, so I was an ER person way back with George Clooney in the 90s. But I have just the little bits I've seen when it's been on. I've thought that looks like Swedish Hospital.
That's interesting.
Yeah, for real.
So how did you become interested in specializing in medical marijuana?
So I really am more of a specialist in palliative care, which is care for people who are dealing with, serious illnesses that affect their life, and how to make their life most beneficial and fulfilling. Um, and medical marijuana was a kind of piece of that. So I was doing home visits with a lot of people who had cancer and multiple sclerosis, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's. And so when medical marijuana was legalized in New York State, it was just a little over 4 years ago, I did the certification course. It was like 2 hours you had to pay to do a course on medical marijuana and the use of it. And then after having done that, you're able to certify people. Um, it's not a very glamorous job. It basically is kind of like a monkey stamping the papers, being like, so and so has an illness that qualifies them, and then they go to the dispensaries, and at the dispensaries they talk to a pharmacist, and talking with a pharmacist, they decide what products for them to start with, based on their condition, based on the symptoms that they're looking to get relief from. And it usually takes a few tries to get the right product. I always have to warn people, like, if it doesn't work the first time, don't just give up. Go back. And I've had some people say it took 2 or 3 tries until they started getting something that was really helping them.
So you do like more like a consulting with the patient, and then like they go to the dispensary, and like can the
Yes.
pharmacist
Yeah.
like say something totally different that you're saying?
Who does?
The pharmacist?
Yeah. Well, the pharmacist would, I'm not telling them because what to try. That discussion goes with the pharmacist. I'm just saying that they have a condition that qualifies them. And I started doing it for my patients, and then I realized there were not very many doctors who were doing this in New York State. And so I was getting a lot of phone calls from people saying, will you come and certify me? And I was like, I can't go to all these people's homes. So I started doing a Thursday morning visits where I would do the medical marijuana certifications. And I did that because there were a lot of doctors who were doing it, were using it as a way to increase their bottom line in income, which to me seemed really unfair. I felt like if somebody qualifies for medical marijuana, they shouldn't have to pay $500 out of pocket for a visit and have to go back every 3 months. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, I do accept a lot of major insurance plans, and you can see people once a year for it. And if I don't accept their insurance, I charge a pretty, I think, reasonable fee of $100 for the
Oh,
visit.
that's not bad. 100.
Yeah.
Because there are,
So
I
the
definitely
state
agree.
doesn't actually charge. Sorry.
No,
What?
no, you're good. I was just agreeing with you that I definitely know what you're talking about, that there are doctors, whether it's in that specific field or just in general, that will overcharge and do like $500. So $100 I think is doable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not fair that something that could help people is out of their ability to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I feel like she basically said this, but I'll just ask it just in case. What steps did you take to specialize in prescribing medical marijuana?
That was it was a pretty easy course. It was like a 2 or 3 hour online course where they talked about THC and cannabinoids and the different products involved in medical marijuana and how they work, and how we have our endocannabinoid system already in our bodies that recognizes the receptors to be able to recognize the marijuana. And so it sort of triggers our own system and what that does. So it was kind of interesting. I already knew a little bit of it. We weren't, certainly New York was not the first to legalize medical marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
We may be the last to legalize recreational marijuana. We'll have to see.
Yeah, for a
Yeah.
while.
Seems to be taking a while. Yeah.
Well, like while you were studying, like your doctoral degree, did they talk about like in your classes or like research about medical marijuana, like the benefits, or that was
There
something?
was no, there's so little research because so marijuana is the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, ranks drugs on their has classes from 1 to 6. Class 1 is considered to have absolutely no medical benefit, and marijuana, like cocaine and PCP, and actually cocaine is class 2. I take that back. PCP and MDMA, all SP, are all class 1 drugs. So the Drug Enforcement Agency still to this day has marijuana as a class 1, no medical benefit in it. And there was very little research being done when I was in medical school and residency. Since then, there's been a lot more. But I do remember having a patient when I was a resident who was working for an organization that I'd never heard about before called Normal. And it was an organization for the regulation and legalization of marijuana. And I remember, and he was this super smart, kind of fancy lawyer. And I was like, wow. It was sort of surprising. It wasn't, you would typically have thought of. And I remember thinking that's never going to happen. So it's been surprising, 20, 30 years later to go, he did it.
Yeah.
It's happening.
That is really cool actually to think about because like we were talking about it in our first episode about marijuana before we decided to maybe find some guests to discuss it. And we were even talking about like how at least was it doctors or just researchers in general, I believe, that said that they consider marijuana almost similar to
It's
heroin and cocaine,
the
right?
federal law, yeah.
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 And it was just so mind-blowing to think that because compared to when these studies are coming out, they're comparing it to things like cocaine and heroin, but now you're slowly starting to see these new studies come out. They're saying like, oh, marijuana does have its benefits. That's why we have medical marijuana now. But it's just like so crazy to see that it would be in the same category as cocaine and heroin.
Right. Well, there's the whole like gateway hypothesis that, well, you start with smoking marijuana and next thing you know, you're shooting up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been proven to be not accurate. Although there is something where if it's illegal and you've been told that something is just as dangerous as something else as a kid, say, and then you go and somebody says, oh, smoke this and you have a good time, then you're like, well, if that's supposed to be so bad and this is supposed to be so bad, maybe I should try. Like I can see that. I think in a way legalizing it helps keep it from becoming that, open you up to just, well, I guess I've already gone down the road of trying something that's illegal, I'll just keep going.
Yeah.
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 I definitely agree with that. But following from this, what do you think is the difference between THC and CBD?
So THC is tetrahydrocannabinol, cannabinol, and CBD is cannabinoids. So they both come from the cannabis plant, but the THC is what makes you have sort of the mind altered function, and the CBD has more of it doesn't have any mind altering function, and that has to do with the receptors in your brain. So the CBD is really what's most helpful for it sort of triggers your endogenous endocannabinoid system, which basically makes you sort of feel better. It's anti-inflammatory. There's debate about anti-cancer properties.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have noticed, well, one, CBD is not regulated. So when you go buy something that has CBD in it and it says it has, 10 milligrams, nobody's checking that. So it could have 0. So that is one problem, that you don't really know what you're getting when you just buy CBD. But when you get it from the dispensary, you'll know exactly how much is there. And if you give a little bit of THC along with the CBD, you potentiate the effect of the CBD without causing the mental effects. So it works better. So I'll get a lot of people who come and say, I don't even know if I should do this because I've been taking CBD and it's not doing anything for me. And then I'll say, well, why don't you try this with just the CBD with a little bit of THC? Because CBD, as you know, you can get anywhere. You can get the gas station. You can get it everywhere in New York now. It's been legalized, but the THC part is the part that's regulated. So if you give a little bit of THC, it really does seem to help. So especially for pain. And then I have a lot of people who say, oh, I see a lot of people who are geriatric in their 70s and 80s, and they will say, oh, I got high once. I can't tolerate that. I don't want to do it. And it's amazing if they use a high CBD, low THC product, how much they benefit. And so there are tons of seniors. I've seen it used for dementia, although that's not an approved diagnosis in New York. It can actually help.
How,
Yeah,
oh, sorry, Ari, you could go.
yeah, it's interesting you say that because our previous guest, the Cynthia Quesada, that has like her own cannabis therapy, she said that most of her patients are like in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was like interesting to see that,
Yeah.
being that I feel
Well,
like people that are older are like more like traditional in their views. Like, I'm not gonna
I
use
think
drugs.
I mean, if you look at the use of medications in general, you're going to get more of an older. Most medications are used by people who are older.
Mhm.
Hold on, my dog needs to go
Okay.
out.
We didn't know about the dementia thing, because what I was gonna say, before Adi had mentioned her thing, was that my grandfather actually, he's been showing early signs of dementia since like 3 years ago, but now it's slowly progressing. Um,
Yeah,
and so I'm just like wondering, like, how would something like that help with dementia?
I have no idea. And it's not, like I said, it's not one of the approved diagnoses. But I have patients who have chronic pain and maybe have dementia. And there was one story that was crazy. This guy told me his grandmother, who I was taking care of, who had, basically is nonverbal, can't talk, can't walk, kind of can stand up and move from chair to bed, but that's about it. That he gave her some of his marijuana. And for the first time, she got up, she walked to the table, she sat down, and she had dinner with the whole family. Now, it was never repeated. And I don't know what happened that one day, but I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And there's nothing dangerous about it. That's one of the things about medical marijuana, that a lot of the drugs that we prescribe can be extremely dangerous. Like there really isn't such a thing as a marijuana overdose. You can kind of green out and just fall asleep. But you can take multitudes more than you should. And it's not going to really be harmful. So now there have been some stories of people who've taken too much and done crazy things that have caused them to die, but the marijuana itself is not going to kill somebody. So
Yeah.
That's a
yeah.
good thought. Um, and then which was the next one? And how can medical marijuana help people with medical and mental conditions?
So by triggering, sort of every drug that we take triggers something in our body. It's recognized as something that the body's either lacking or isn't producing enough of.
Mm-hmm.
So the marijuana triggers the receptors in our endocannabinoid system, and that causes the effects. So you have nerves, they come up to a synapse, they release a substance to trigger the next nerve to do something. And the cannabinoids will trigger so that next nerve gets triggered, and the THC prevents it from being, taken back up, so that it continues, so it has more of an effect, so that your system is getting triggered, and it gets triggered a little bit longer than it would if you just had the CBD by itself. So that's the main way it works. It's a whole that could be a whole hour-long biochemistry class.
Literally, it just flashed me back to my first semester of college, and I'm learning about psychology.
Exactly.
And now with my science course, oh my goodness.
And one of the things that part of the main reason that people who are older are interested in taking medical marijuana is they don't want to get as high. Some people who are younger are taking it for more recreational, mind-altering uses. And so the market, street marijuana, is made to be stronger and stronger and stronger and have more and more THC, and not as much CBD. Whereas the medical marijuana. So I always warn people, if I get somebody young who I think wants to get a medical card really so that they can get high, I'm always like, it is much cheaper and much stronger if you're getting it off the street. Like, if you're not, that's great. You can do this. But it's not, don't think that this is going to be your magic, pill or anything.
Yeah.
Do you find that like when meeting with patients to certify them, do you ask them if they're using recreational marijuana? Like, does that affect like if they're using like CBD?
Yeah, I ask them about everything they're taking, and I'd say about half of people, have been using marijuana, and a lot of them will say, I am, but I can't then function during the day. So that's why I thought I'd get the medical marijuana, so I wasn't, as high, and yet I'm getting the relief that I need. The biggest benefit I've seen is really for chronic pain. I see people who have been on opiates and had a hard time being able to function. And what we've learned about taking opiates is, yeah, they might immediately take your pain away, but that pain actually gets worse. And so if you look at people over a year period with back pain, those who are on opiates have just as much pain as people who aren't taking opiates, but they are not functioning as well.
That's
Really,
sad.
yeah. And so I've seen people who are like, there's one guy who came in a year after he started for his recertification. I didn't recognize him. He had gotten off of his couch. He'd started exercising. He was going back to school. He'd lost weight, and he was like a different person. So it was a really dramatic example of what it could do. So, I mean, I did this because I felt like it was going to be, when I did the certification, because I thought it's legal. And if people want to do it, I should be able to offer it to them, and it shouldn't be so difficult for them to do. But after 4 years, I've seen some pretty amazing things that it can do.
That's good.
Nice.
Yeah.
The last thing we were saying, just the changes of basically what it can do with the CBD, basically, then, right?
Right. So the CBD, and there are some times where you do need THC, especially people who are chemotherapy or cancer related, nausea, lack of appetite. You're really, that you do need the THC to get that to boost. So sometimes people will take that more at night and then do CBD during the day.
Is that to like I guess you can say, because you know how like people that have the basic marijuana from the street, they get the munchies and they get
Exactly.
hungry. Is that basically to just help them gain back the appetite?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Yeah, you're trying to induce the munchies. Because a lot of people with chemotherapy, they're just like, nothing tastes good. I just don't have any interest in eating anything. So that THC can make a difference.
Cool. How does New York's like restrictive rules on medical marijuana impact access to medical marijuana to patients?
Yeah, it's, they have to go through the hoops. A lot of states, like in California, any doctor can write you a script and say that you qualify for medical marijuana. New York made this whole thing where I had to do the course and then be in the system to be able to certify people. And that, so they haven't made it very easy. Then once I certify them, they need to go onto the New York State site and register. And especially when you can imagine, I have people in their 70s or 80s. Sometimes they really have a hard time with technology. and getting certified. And so then they send me messages and I'm like, I have no control over the state site. You have to call them because you need both the certification paper that I give them plus the card to be able to go.
Do you think like all those loopholes like kind of like deter people from like even applying or?
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
From what you just said, then what are the steps that people have to take after they would visit you to get the medical marijuana?
Yeah, so the first page that I send them is like a basically almost, it's not a prescription, but it's because I usually put that they get a certain, you can write it as a prescription. I could say you can only have 20-to-1 CBD THC, or you can only have 1-to-1. I tend to say as per pharmacist because I don't know what's going to work for them. So I just put it as per pharmacist. And then they go on to the my.newyork.gov website and they have to register and they have to put in if they're not from New York State and they don't have a license, then it can be more difficult as well. So then they register and they can also designate someone as a caregiver. So like I have patients who have cancer who or are older and can't really get out of the house. They can designate somebody, maybe their daughter or son or spouse, as a caregiver, could even be a friend. And then that person registers and they get a card as well. And that way they could actually go to the dispensary for the other person. So like my dad had cancer, I registered as a caregiver and I was able to go and get him some products to try. So
That's interesting. Yeah, you mentioned they had to have like a license. So like I'm guessing like people who are immigrants and they don't have papers are not able to
if you don't have a license, it can work, but you need to be able to take a picture of yourself, upload that, and then they send it to me, and I have to verify that they are who they say they are.
Okay.
So it is a whole loophole back and forth. It takes a lot of time to even just get there to the dispensary, basically. Then.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody is on it and from the time they see me, within an hour, they could be all ready to go and go to the dispensary. But if they get a temporary card. They didn't used to do that. You used to have to wait the full. Well, originally, when they first did this 4 years ago, the cards came within 3 days. It was really, really fast. Then it started getting out to 7 or 10 days, and then they came up with the temporary card. So they get this immediate electronic temporary card they can print out or just keep on their phone, and then they could go that same day.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do you believe that there is a stigma against medical marijuana? And if so, why?
I think there's less and less so. 4 years ago, I had a lot of doctors who were like, oh, you're doing certifications for medical marijuana. Isn't that risky? Aren't you scared? And I was like, why? It's legal. No, it's not legal federally, but it's legal. It can help people. It's not dangerous. If it can help them, they should have the ability to try it. Some of those same physicians who were like, how can you be doing this? Well, 2 years later, we're like, hey, would you see this patient of mine who has chronic pain or has cancer or is, having nausea with chemotherapy or whatever it is. So I definitely saw a general acceptance of it over the last 4 years, to the point where I think now everyone's just like, legalize it recreationally, at this point.
Yeah. Because I know for me personally, I didn't know that much about recreational marijuana until we decided to do it for an episode. And just from our part 1 and then, interviewing you and our last guest, I've just learned so much, because before the only thing I knew about was mainly just street marijuana and what I've heard and seen from people around me that do take it. And it's just like a completely different thing in a way. And that also has to do with just the THC and then the CBD also. But like I would have never thought it would help like older patients and those with dementia and even cancer patients.
Yeah. I did a talk on medical marijuana for an oncology support group, and before I started, we went around the room, and there were about 20 people there, and each person said sort of why they were there and what their experience was with marijuana, and most of them had stage 4 cancer and had used marijuana to cure themselves. Something that if they weren't sitting in front of me, I would have said, yeah, right. But here they were, 3 years after being told to call hospice, and they were doing really well. So I haven't seen that in, the evidence in medical world, but I definitely know my work at hospice, our patients who are using medical marijuana who have cancer are lasting and living way longer than our patients who are not.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
So.
Do you do research? Like, are you like documenting like your
No,
patients?
it's funny. When I applied to med school, a bunch of my interviews, they said, well, you haven't done any research. And I said, no, I'm really not interested in research. I'm a clinician. I want to work with people. Like I didn't go into this to do
Mhm.
the research part.
Mm-hmm.
And I've sort of stayed that way. I find research really interesting. I read different research that's gone that's
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
out there, but I'm not a researcher.
Mm-hmm. I
Okay.
was about to say you should definitely write a book on this because it's so interesting, and especially just how you came into this and what led to you studying it, and then just the things that you've seen. Like, I would love to read it in a book if you wrote it in a book.
Mhm.
I
I'll
always
find a
talked
copy.
about writing a book, but I haven't gotten there yet. I'm too busy to write.
Well, we'll definitely get the book if you do it. And then next, what are your thoughts on the legalization of recreational marijuana if it does become legalized, like federally?
I think we really do need to legalize it federally as well as in New York State. The idea that people are going to jail or paying fines for marijuana, you can. And when I look at the safety of marijuana versus alcohol, and it's out there, it's being used. There's no, and it has some benefit. So people need to be responsible about it. I think if there are many people who are overusing, but can over you could eat too many donuts too. Like there's a lot of negative things that we have out there that we're not going to start regulating just because if you overuse it, it has problems. Um, Certainly, operating a machinery and cars and driving, that needs to be, but it's driving under the influence, whether it's alcohol or marijuana. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do agree on that one too,
Mhm.
because
I mean, if you look at like violence against women and you compare marijuana and alcohol, you know, I'd I'd much rather see people using one than the other.
yeah,
It just doesn't seem to happen as much.
yeah, I definitely agree on that part because it's just like I really don't understand how sometimes people really do go to jail for like just something as simple as selling just marijuana on the street or just having too much on them compared to someone like what you just said harming women and
Yeah,
could literally just be in jail for 6 months compared to someone who was just caught with weed. So it's just an
exactly.
Yeah.
insane thing to even think about. And even if it did become legalized, there definitely are regulations, that they could put in place, that would also just help it, and especially help those statistics, maybe, I guess.
Mhm.
Well, and I don't know if you've ever been up to Massachusetts has legalized it recreationally, and they have dispensaries. And if you go to the dispensaries, as I have, and you're in the parking lot, you will see all the license plates are New York and New Jersey. Now New Jersey has legalized it, and
Yeah.
there's long lines. They're very good as far as COVID goes. They have everybody sort of spaced out, and but you look and you go, New York could be getting all of this tax revenue and instead it's going to Massachusetts.
Next, New
Unbelievable.
Jersey.
So, I mean, I think one of the reasons I've been told that it hasn't become legal in New York recreationally that I can understand is that the racial disparities of people being incarcerated for marijuana. And instead of then legalizing it and allowing, white corporate people to then profit from the legalization, there's really an effort to make sure that there are some there's racial equity with how it's actually legalized and who's just able to work the dispensaries and so forth. So
Yeah, that's something that we mentioned in our first part of like talking about marijuana, that even in the states like, like California and Colorado, they have like the legalized recreational marijuana. Like there's people making tons of money off of this business, and there's people like rotting in jail in other states, and it's just like so conflicting with the federal law, the state laws. Like every state has a different regulation, and it just makes everything so confusing and like divided.
I know. And then I heard because it's not legal, that people have like basically warehouses of cash because they don't know what they can't, you can't get banks to sort of accept the money. So it's ridiculous.
And then just following this, have you seen like from do you have, by the way, we didn't mention this before, do you have your own practice, or
I
where do
do.
you do your work?
Yeah. It's Nightingale Medical. And I honestly am not looking for lots of extra patients. I'm happy to help people out. But if people go on the New York website, they can look up doctors who can certify them for medical marijuana.
Interesting. But have you personally seen an increase of people seeking medical marijuana due to the pandemic?
Really, it's been pretty steady, because I do it the 1/2 day a week, and I would say, if anything, maybe a little bit of a drop off. And that part of it may also be because it is legal in Massachusetts and New Jersey, or people are getting sent thing. I think that the feeling is that the post office and the feds are not cracking down as much as they used to. So people feel a little bit more comfortable with having, their cousin in Colorado sending them something, or, their aunt in California. So people are sort of getting it even without going through the proper channels.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned this, but you said like you're not really, I guess you're busy, have a full caseload.
I am super busy. Because of COVID, I moved to doing all telehealth visits on those Thursdays.
Okay.
And then because I do a lot of palliative care, I've been busy with those. So so I'm always happy to help somebody out. But
yeah, like our last just point was just where can like listeners find if they're interested in your services.
Yeah, Google New York medical marijuana providers, and then you'll get the doctors who can certify you.
Okay, got it. Well, that's the questions that we had for today.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any last thoughts to say to our listeners.
No, but you guys keep doing this. It's awesome. You're both super smart, bright. I can't wait to see what you continue to put out there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You guys have a good night.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
I can't believe we were just talking to the doctor.
I know. I was really sweating. I'm literally here. I'm like, I honestly forgot if I even put on deodorant beforehand. So I'm like, yo, I'm hardcore sweating under this sweater shirt because I was so nervous. I was like, yo, like I'm telling my cousins, I was like, yo, you down there with the baby, lower the volume. I'm texting my cousin right now that has the sink on, lower the water volume. I can't, because I was just like, hello, we have a freaking doctor on the podcast, I just want to say thank you to Dayanara. I'll always remember you, my love, being our first guest on our podcast ever. Thank you, Cynthia, Dr. Carpenter. Thank you for taking time out of your days to even just come on Two Young Girls podcast, because we're going up in life. We got a doctor on the podcast. Talk to me nice.
PhDs up in here.
Literally, because like I'm just hearing that whole thing and I'm just like, wow. Like I literally wanted to send her fan mail because I'm like, your work is amazing, exquisite, a masterpiece.
I also like I can tell she's the type of doctor that like cares about her patients and is there to listen, and then is not there just for the money.
Indeed. Yeah, I definitely felt that vibe from her because she just was so genuine about everything, and like even from how she came up with even just wanting to be a doctor, just trying to help people. And I've definitely at least from watching Grey's Anatomy, I can see how just being a doctor, sometimes people can move away from that route because it could just be so overwhelming sometimes dealing with people and when you're trying to help them, and um, sometimes it just doesn't go their way. But to see that after all these years of her being a doctor, like she stuck by it, and it's still something she enjoys,
Mhm.
and she's sticking to her, I guess, her morals and just her viewpoints, and just sticking to the path that she originally just wanted to take. So I really admire that from what we got when we interviewed her.
Yeah. Um, Hopefully you guys enjoy like our marijuana series.
Yo, I honestly think this marijuana series was popping
Yeah.
because we even got my dad putting fire emojis in the comments. Like, that's something.
Mhm.
I'm gonna text him right now and be like, "Wait till you see this episode. I had a doctor. I spoke to a doctor, and her crib was so nice. You saw
Her
those
what?
lights on the wall? Those were
Yeah,
fancy
I
lights
was.
on the wall.
She had like some nice like them like long windows. Like I don't know how to
Yeah, I was
describe it,
like,
but
she
like
got
those
high
windows are
ceilings.
like
I know she got high ceilings. Yeah, it's moments where like this where I know we're Dominican, and
because
moments where
we're
we're true New
nosy.
Yorkers. Because here we are talking about the high ceilings. But no, that was amazing, honestly. And you know what? She's definitely not going to be the last guest we have on the podcast. But this series was actually really nice. I didn't think it was going to come out this great, but hey, like it's been Gucci.
Yeah, like this was just like an idea we had. We knew like what we wanted to present in our episode, but like in terms of the guests, like when you reach out to people, you don't know if they're gonna get back to you. You don't know how it's
Yeah,
gonna go. You don't know what's gonna be the vibe.
literally. You don't
We
know
had
if they're
a
going to be a bad guest, or like, cuz these are people we don't even know. Maybe we have some kind of an interaction. Maybe Ariana may has known them from the past or has heard about them, but these last three guests, I'm strangers to too. So it's just like you just never know. And it's one of those moments where I definitely relate to like late night show hosts like cuz James Corden.
no.
Oh my god.
Am I supposed to know him?
I mean, I forget you don't watch TV, but yeah, so I'll show you a video of him. But basically, he has this game where it's like you eat this disgusting food if you don't want to answer this question. And it's basically like, and I see him and other hosts like talk about this, um, like actually having guests on the show and like actually having bad experiences with them because they're not the best people. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
I I get so scared when we have a host because I'm just like, well,
Yeah.
how's it gonna really be, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, like
But
with
it's been
with
great.
like the guests we have like in our podcast so far, like they're all like really passionate in what they do. So and you can see it like with the way they speak it, and like we ask them a question and like they don't respond to the question. They go beyond that. Well, like there's other people like you interview them and like you really gotta like dig in and push them.
Yeah, because they could be bland.
Yeah.
And these ladies that we've interviewed, they just go so into detail. They go beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, guys, so that concludes finally our medical marijuana series. Thank you for listening. If you haven't caught up on the last few episodes, make sure you do that. And now we're gonna get into this week's current events.
For this episode, being that our interview was a bit longer than we expected, we're only going to do a few current events. But stay look on the lookout for our Instagram and our on our website where we'll post more stuff that happened throughout the week. So
Mhm.
first, we have Minneapolis pays $27 million to the family of George Floyd. On Friday, March 12th, the city of Minneapolis approved a $27 million settlement with the family of George Floyd. The settlement is from a federal civil rights lawsuit filed by the family against the city and the four former police officers who were involved. George Floyd's brother stated that he would use some of the money to help struggling Black communities, but he also said that he would rather be able to see his brother again. And he quoted, "If I could get him back, I would give all of this back, this as in the money." And also, according to the Minneapolis City Council president, Lisa Bender, said that the money from the settlement, $500,000 of it will go to businesses around the area where the incident happened, where George Floyd was killed. And it's also important to know that this settlement has nothing to do with the criminal trial that's approaching of the officers that were involved in the death of George Floyd. Um, so yeah, that's something. I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I know it's different than like the criminal trial, but like I don't.
I don't know about that either. Like, we definitely said this when we first started our podcast, and they had first mentioned a settlement, especially in the summertime. Yeah, in the summertime when we had the podcast first starting. They had mentioned an original settlement, but I forget if it went through or not. And then now this $27 million is a lot of money. And like, it's it's money, yes, but I don't know how it I feel like it's messed up to
Mhm.
take money from people on the behalf of like a family member dying. Like if someone gave me money, if this state was to give me money and my family money for my uncle's death, um I know it would be a big deal for some people in my family because it's money, but for me personally, I don't know, it just feels wrong. Like
Yeah.
how does money justify a person's life, you know?
Yeah, like they're getting all this money, but we don't know like what's gonna happen in the trial that's coming up, I believe in May.
Yeah.
So it's like I know it's different than the criminal trial, but like it's the same incident, so I kind of see the same.
Yeah, like, because then who's to say that he's going to get justice in the actual criminal trial? Because for all we know, he's not going to get justice. And what? Now you have $27 million. Is that supposed to justify it now? Dot, dot, dot.
It doesn't bring him back. It doesn't provide healing for the family and friends that were close to George Floyd.
Yeah.
It doesn't bring justice, and you know, and this is not the first time that happened. It happened in other cases where black men or black teenagers have died, and the city will give money, and there will be no justice for the victim.
Indeed. Um, so moving on from this current event, we have our next one, which has to do with a shooting in Atlanta in 3 spas were attacked. And so basically it was literally just recent today they caught the guy, and it's like been going on since last night basically. But I'm just gonna read off the things that we found so far on it. So basically last night a 21-year-old named Robert Aaron Long was arrested for being a suspect of a rampage on a shooting at 3 spas in Atlanta. And as of right now, he's been charged with 8 counts of murder in connection with the attacks. And according to the New York Times, here are some things that you need to know officially that have been confirmed. So, he's been charged so far with 8 counts of murder, like I said. 6 of the 8 victims were women of Asian descent. President Biden has come out with an announcement in response to the situation, noting his concern for it as well, and trying his best right now to um, help the Asian community because he knows how a lot of them are fearful, like based off what happened. Like even if that wasn't here in New York, it's still an ongoing issue that we mentioned briefly in a few episodes of one of the current events when the Asian attacks first started happening. But they're literally getting so out of hand now that this white guy is literally going out in the street to guns strapped to his back and going into spas where Asian ladies are working and is shooting them. And not even Asian ladies, because they were all Asian, the 8 victims. So, a survivor of the shooting spree called his wife saying that he had been shot and to please come. The suspect's parents identified him in surveillance footage during the manhunt, and I actually saw the footage of him like leaving and going back to his car. And he was just walking so casually, like this man didn't just shoot a whole bunch of people and literally kill them. And this basically is just showing the rise of how Asian Americans right now are being attacked across America and how much it's grown since the pandemic started. And the statistic right now that is being announced based off these attacks is that Asian Americans were nearly targeted in nearly 3,800 hate incidents in the past year. That's a lot. And so basically, based off a few of the things that I've seen so many people on my feed, whether I know them or not, posting on it. And it's like really sad to see that even one of my friends, not gonna mention her name because I don't know if she would want me to, but even announcing her concern for her own family and how her grandparents even want to come from China back to New York, and she's in fear of their lives. How her mom is close to the Asian community, where she lives, and she's scared to even leave her house now and possibly get attacked because it's happening everywhere. And it's
Yeah.
like one of those things that people are really trying to um make it seem like not a big deal, or just trying to push it to the side and pretend like it's not really happening, or it's just something that always happens in the world. Like, no, that shouldn't be the case. And it's just frustrating to think about
Mhm.
because I definitely agree on the point of the same energy that everybody had towards BLM should be towards the Asian community right now. There should be no for one side this, one side that, because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, the main fact is, and this is how everybody shows that we're equal, and talking about, oh, we need to be seen as equals, equal rights, treating people equally, like how white people versus black people with the police. The same thing goes for other minorities, because Black people have their own struggles, but so do Hispanics, and so do Asian Americans. And it's
Mhm.
not even just Asian Americans, Indians, Muslims, everybody that is not considered white in America faces their own personal struggle. And right now, just like this time last year, it was Black people and people of color. It is definitely now Asians, and I definitely think it needs more awareness. So definitely check up on your Asian friends if you know them, and sign petitions if you need to. Pay attention to these things, post them on your feed, because they do need awareness. Because literally, it's so funny too, because literally this morning I was with babysitting my baby cousin, and I literally had a dream that because I don't know if I said this on the podcast, but I know I spoke to you about it, like me visiting Japan to study abroad. And in my dream, it's literally like, it was such a sad thing to even think about, but seeing that the crimes even from here travel back to China. And I was my first day there for my studying trip, and I think I was just there for the summer. I don't remember. It was a brief dream. And I was just walking down the streets of Japan, and I saw this Asian guy getting jumped by some white people. And so I went to go defend him, and I literally got shot. And
Wow.
yeah, but it was just like one of those things where it's just like, like it's one of those things where it's like the possibility of you getting hurt, but I I knew I was still content, even though I died in that way, sadly, even though it was my first day there. It's just because like I died doing the right thing. Like,
Mhm.
like, yeah, it can be scary even just speaking up your views sometimes, because sometimes honestly people do care what other people think. But at the end of the day, always have the mindset and just believe in yourself, trust your gut that like what you're doing is right. And like if you feel a certain way, voice it. If you see people being treated a certain way, help them. Sometimes people can't speak up for themselves, and sometimes people don't, they try to speak up for themselves and they just get told to just shut up about it. And like it makes them draw back, so it's definitely important to speak up in those situations, and that goes for helping the Asian community right now, Blacks, Hispanics, anybody that needs it,
Mm-hmm.
and um same thing with women that we see with harassment and assault. Like, you see something, say something. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those things where, being a New Yorker and growing up and being on the train every single day to go to school, I would see on the train, if you see something, say something. And that's not just talking about a little bag under your subway seat. No, it's
Yeah.
talking about everything and anything, because the things that happen in the train station of New York City is crazy.
Yeah.
But if it's that bad in the train station, imagine how bad it is above the train station.
Yes.
So definitely, I really do want to discuss this for a possible topic to go more in depth. But as of right now, guys, definitely check it up on your friends, help those around you, and just don't forget to be empathetic and show sympathy for others. Like, just treat everybody as if they're your neighbor, basically.
Yeah. And everybody that's listening, that's Asian American or Pacific Islander, um, we hear your pain. Your pain is validated, and we will be a voice. We will use our platform, our podcast, our Instagram to bring awareness about what's going on, because we're aware that big social media platforms are not talking about this, and it needs to
Yeah.
be talked about.
Sadly, yeah, definitely on that too, because I definitely only see Asian people, like Asian famous people discussing it. I don't even see people that are non-Asians that are famous discussing it. And it's just like they're either being ignorant towards it, or they honestly just don't know about it. But like, still,
Yeah.
if it's this big to the point where a few people that are non-Asian or not a part of the Asian community that I even know and aren't famous and they know about it, a famous person should know about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're on tours or anything right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Everybody's home. So, yeah, guys. Just what Ariana said. We're with you guys. If you need a voice, we'll be here. And just stay tuned for the next few episodes as we update you guys on that. And we'll definitely be going into it also on our website too. So check that out as well. But yeah, concluding this week's episode, this is it.
Peace out.
Yeah, bye guys.